The following is a presentation by the Carolina Panthers football team.
The Carolina Panthers select.
This is the Panthers Draft Show, presented by Bud Light. And now your hosts, Anish Shroff with Panthers legends Thomas Davis and Al Wallace.
This is the Panthers Draft Show, Day 1, presented by Bud Light. Anish Shroff alongside a couple of legends. You know Thomas Davis, you know Al Wallace. They're going to break down what the Panthers should do in the draft, what they could do in the draft. We'll give you our own picks with our own little mock, and we will have a little giveaway, but you have to wait to the end of the show for that. But let's get started with this. This is Dan Morgan's second draft. What have we learned about how Dan approaches the NFL draft from what we saw a year ago?
I think Dan has shown that he's willing to make some smart decisions and some tough decisions. And to me, that was shown in the way that we approached the Xavier Legette situation. You know, to be in a position where we could have drafted him in the second round and take a chance on Buffalo not selecting him. But what did Dan do? He made a smart decision. Let me move up into the first round, so that way we'll have this kid locked in for an extra year and give us that leverage that we need at the end of the day. So I love that move, and it just shows to me that Dan is thinking along the lines of, what can I do for this team for the future, and how can we solidify Xavier Legette?
Yeah, I think what Dan has done is build for a foundation, and it really is the fundamentals of football, attacking some of the big guys we saw a year ago with the offensive line, and then this year addressing the big guys in the middle of the defensive line. So it's a plan that you know that he's worked on since he entered this business with the Seattle Seahawks, and now being able to go and execute that and really knowing and understanding that football, it starts at the line of scrimmage, and he's taken care of that the last 2 off seasons.
Now, the Panthers have the 8th overall pick in this year's draft, and Al, to your point, one of the things we've heard Dan say repeatedly, stay disciplined. This isn't about putting a bandage on a bullet wound, so to speak. They want to do this the right way. They want to build this thing the right way, and as you said, it's trenches out.
Yeah, absolutely, because football, if you don't take care of the line of scrimmage, you're going to get pushed around offensively. If you don't take care of the line of scrimmage defensively, your linebackers are in trouble, your secondary, you're not going to earn that right on third down, the pass rush. And I think for Dan, having that experience at linebacker, it absolutely helps. He knows how important that line of scrimmage is. You win that line of scrimmage, you win football.
Absolutely. And when you look at him going in and really solidifying this offensive line, you know, that was one of the favorite things that I was able to witness and watch him do last year, because we knew everybody talked about Bryce's stature and him being able to hold up against what was coming and what was going to be an all-out assault when it came to getting after the quarterback. He went and he solidified the offensive line in a big way. And if we see what he's been able to do this offseason with free agency with the defensive line, like you just talked about, I absolutely love the moves, because going into it, you know, you heard about us picking up the guy Williams from Philadelphia, and I think that the way that everything worked out, it worked out in our favor, because you didn't invest another $90 to $100 million in a player. You allowed yourself to invest more money into more quality players, and that was one of the biggest things that we needed going into this offseason based on what had happened with the defense over the course of last year. We know that you never want to be sitting in a position where your defense is giving up the most points in NFL history, and with what we've been able to do this offseason, we are a much better football team right now defensively.
Yeah, big emphasis in free agency on defense. See some of the guys that they brought in, and also a couple of guys they brought back. They re-signed Mike Jackson. Oh, by the way, Derek Brown coming back from injury. That's getting essentially the best free agent on the market. He was signed to an extension, but would have been the top free agent available. Again, the Panthers pick 8th in this draft, and historically that 8th overall pick has been pretty kind to the Panthers. 1996, they draft Tim Biakabatuka. He had some moments but had some injuries. The other 3 picks, all home runs. Jordan Gross, he's up there in the Ring of Honor.
Oh, yeah.
Christian McCaffrey might be someday, and J.C. Horn just got paid this offseason. That 8th pick has been kind to Carolina.
It's definitely been special, and I expect Dan is going to find us another special player, man. And we have a lot of guys that could be sitting there right there when we draft Allen. I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out for us.
Yeah, I think with the 8th overall pick, you are just outside of the boom or bust of the first 2 or 3 picks of the draft, and in a position just inside that top 10 where teams are going to look to make moves with you. You're in an interesting spot. But over the history of the Carolina Panthers, those guys that we just talked about, they could be faces of the franchise. The Panthers have not missed, and I don't see Dan Morgan stumbling here. This is a good position to be in. You're going to get a really good player.
Yeah, TD, you alluded to all the defensive players that the Panthers brought in during free agency. I think before free agency, if we were looking at the draft, we would have said, oh, no doubt, Carolina's going defense. They're probably going defense with the first pick. They might go defense with the first 3 or 4 picks. Yeah. Based on what they've done in free agency, defense versus offense, how do you see the balance?
Listen, I think what Dan has done this offseason, it allows us to make whatever decision we want moving forward based on who's going to be available. And, you hear people talk about taking the best available all the time, but in this situation, we can truly do that. And whether it's a Jalen Walker out of Georgia that we could potentially take in that position, or we talked about Graham out of Michigan being able to select that kid, or if you go to the offensive side, I identify guys like Tyler Warren out of Penn State or Ted McKellen, like bringing those kind of guys into your franchise. I don't think that you can get it wrong with any of those players if they're sitting there, Al.
Yeah, I think what Dan has done this offseason by solidifying that offensive line with Tershawn Wharton and Bobby Brown is really beef up the defensive line and the ability to stop the run. And it doesn't change, I think, my overall thought process on what Dan needed to attack during this draft, and that's edge rusher. You need that home run hitter. So you got the setup guys, the big guys up front to do the dirty work, and now you go out and you get a difference maker on the edge. And when you win football games, just look at this year's Super Bowl. You come screaming off the edge and you do damage. Oh, yeah.
And Al, as you know, because you played on maybe the best defensive line Carolina ever fielded, you need depth there too.
You absolutely need depth because unlike offensive linemen who stay out there 40, 50 snaps a game, you expect maximum effort. And I just remember being coached by Sal Sunseri. Hey, if you got 1 play in you, 2 plays, you give me 1,000%, and then we'll bring in another hitter. And when you have really good depth pieces on your defensive line, you're able to do that with confidence without any significant drop-off in production.
Peppers, Rucker, Al Wallace, Shane Burton. Am I missing anybody?
Kendall Moorhead.
Brenton Buckner, yes. Chris Jenkins. Yeah. Listen, when I got drafted into this team, I was a safety, that could potentially play linebacker. But once I had the opportunity to move to the linebacker spot and having those guys in front of me, that made the transition so much easier for me because you want to be able to run free, stay clean as a smaller linebacker that was built on speed and moving around. You wanted guys up front that could keep guys off of you. And I had Al Wallace, I had Brenton Buckner, I had Chris Jenkins, I had Julius Peppers, Mike Rucker. I wasn't worried about anything but going out and playing the game and really focusing in on what I had to do and learning that position.
Yeah, it's part of the refrain that we've heard. We heard it last year. Hey, a great offensive line can cover up a lot on offense. Same goes with a great defensive line on the other side of the football. All right, we still have plenty to do on this draft special. Make sure to stay tuned to the end of the program where we will be announcing the winner of our draft show giveaway presented by Bud Light. And when we come back, we will give you our mock draft picks.
All right, keep pounding is last. We'll finish with that.
Ritter Hammerman.
It wasn't the W-E, it's a V. Vitter.
Oh, for V?
Vitter
Hammerman.
Listen, on our teams, you never had the opportunity to come to a training camp practice where you didn't hear me and Cam Newton going at it. It ultimately made me a better player, and I know for a fact that it made him a better player.
Year 2 was just like, wow, the ability for me to potentially be on Cart's is here. It's
coaches having juice, like Dave Canales has juice.
He has bulletproof coffee. That's what he told me. A little bit more than juice. It's the whole shebang.
You know what? That does not surprise me.
And to be honest with you, they shouldn't even put them in a conversation with us.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. In conversation with us. They were dabbing, we were buzzing heads. We some head busters. We will knock a hater out. We some head busters.
out of here. Good drop. Good drop. Yeah, hell of a shot. Motion. Nick, post. Hey, stand tall right here.
I mean, I think there's something to be said for a player being able to come back to his home state and play for the team that he grew up watching the most. And, I mean, just to be able to secure him, what does he do for the offensive backfield? And I know we signed Chuba to a long-term deal, and we know what he brings to the table, but what does Rico also add?
Well, you know, I think if you look at most running back rooms, you know, the best running back rooms are the ones that have two backs that they're both really good runners, right? So for us to have Chuba and spell Chuba with Rico, you know, we're not going to lose much per se when he comes on the field. They'll both be able to keep each other healthy. It's a long season, as we know. Guys get nicked up, guys get hurt, and to have a guy like this, you know, behind Chuba is super valuable.
Panthers fans, be a part of the welcoming party for our first round draft pick tomorrow at Bank of America Stadium. It's the welcome walk. It'll be open to the public. It's located at the East Gate entrance of the stadium. For more information, go to panthers.com/fans/welcome-walk. That'll be a lot of fun. We'll get to meet our first round pick on Friday at the start of day 2 of the NFL draft. We're still talking day 1. The one thing I am tired of, you tired of all the mock drafts yet?
Man, beyond, because you just never know where these guys are going to end up. And that's one thing that, you know, you got the Mike Mayock's and all of the draft analysts who make the right decisions when it comes to selecting guys, and they just have no clue where these guys are going to end up at, Al.
Yeah, that's the fun part for me, though, to watch all the experts and the analysts try to decide what these war rooms are looking like, what everybody's boards are stacked up to be, and to see it finally play out on Thursday, Friday, Saturday is exciting because guys get it wrong all the time. I think you take this great pool of players and you throw it against the board and you hope it comes out right.
Yeah, some of these mock drafts are wild where they have 5-6 trades in the first round. You've got certain mock drafts where you have to remember you've got agents feeding these folks information they want out there with intent. You have GMs maybe trying to throw other GMs off the scent, right? A lot of anonymous coaches seem to be speaking this time of the year.
You know, I think one of the things that was very interesting in watching the Draft Day movie and just seeing all the different intricate parts that kind of went into it. And you look at it, and it's a lot like what really happens in real Draft Day situations. But I think one of the biggest things that you look at, you can never really determine or dictate what team needs determined in draft day situations, because last year I did not anticipate that many quarterbacks being selected in the first round, but that was something that we saw happening. I just look at a situation like Bo Nix in Denver and watching Bo Nix at Auburn. I never expected him to play football on the next level, let alone be a first round pick.
There's always going to be some runs in teams. If we talk about it being a copycat league, you get the panic. So I'm excited to see who hits that panic button first and jumps up and makes a move to get the guy they deem the best on the board.
So I'll say this. There's a website out there, NFLMockDraftDatabase.com. They have tracked so far, ready for this, 1,392 different mock drafts. We're going to add one more to the tally. So what we've done is we've done an aggregate of all those mock drafts, and it has revealed how the top 7 picks would go. Again, this is an aggregate, and then we're going to give you our 8th overall pick, but this is an aggregated sample of 30 industry-leading mock drafts. Let's reveal picks 1 through 7. Cam Ward going 1st overall, Travis Hunter to the Browns. The Giants go edge with Abdul Carter. Will Campbell, the tackle from LSU, at 4. Ashton Genty, 5 to the Jaguars. And then you've got the Missouri offensive lineman, Membu, and then the tight end from Penn State, Warren. You're the Panthers there. A couple of guys we already talked about. Mason Graham, Jalen Walker, both available. Tet McMillan, who I know you like, TD, also available. You obviously have the opportunity to trade a pick. If the draft breaks like that, you're a Carolina fan, I would think you got to be pretty ecstatic.
Absolutely, absolutely. I would love to be sitting in this position with the draft board looking just like that, because right now I feel like those aren't guys that we were going to be selecting or that we anticipated being there for us anyway. But everybody that we wanted, I feel like, Al, is right there for us. So without a doubt, if I'm sitting in that position, just based on what we've done in free agency so far, I got to add a guy like Jalen Walker from Georgia to that draft board at the 8th spot, because when you look at Jalen, I've been watching him since he was in high school over in Salisbury. He's a North Carolina kid. He understands what the Panther history is. You hear him talk about it in his interviews. He talked about myself, talked about Luke Kuechly and growing up watching us. But people don't understand how big of a difference it is to be able to come play in your home state. You hear Icky talk about it all the time, playing for the home team and how big of a difference that makes for a kid. But everything that I've heard out of Georgia, everybody loves the kid, Jalen Walker. They absolutely love his on the field things that he brings to the table, but off the field, they love him as a person.
All right, so you played your hand right there. The draft breaks the way it did according to those top 30 industry mocks. You're going with a fellow Georgia guy, Jalen Walker.
Absolutely. That's who I'm selecting. I'm putting Jalen at that 8th pick.
Al, what about you?
Yeah, there's no mistake. If this board drops in Dan Morgan's hands, we're expecting Cam Ward to go 1. Travis Hunter, the most exciting player on this board. I love Abdul Carter and what he does from an edge rush standpoint. We watched him in the college football playoff. But if this board breaks the way it does for Dan Morgan and his staff at number 8, I'm going Georgia. I'm going Jalen Walker because he has position versatility. I think he has the motor that you need at that position. And he has a guy that is just going to have the right type of character. He feels like a Carolina Panther, a coach's kid that's going to come with a cerebral mindset to a position that's just going to take some chaos, control chaos, and I love it. Being an edge rusher, you can see it. I'm not concerned about all the height, weight. None of that matters. Can you produce? Are you a hunter? I believe Jalen Walker's a hunter, and I want him on this team.
Yeah, the one word we keep hearing with Walker, chess piece, a guy who you can move around. He has been described as edge rusher / off-ball linebacker. Is that accurate, or is he one or the other?
I love him to be that chess piece. I think you can use him off ball. There is nothing wrong with pulling a guy who's a primary edge rusher off the ball, blitzing him through the A gap, being able to create those mismatches. And we see it all the time with Micah Parsons. I know Abdul Carter is the closest comp to Micah Parsons, but what about Jalen Walker having that position versatility to rush the A gap but also come off the edge?
You say a lot of things that I absolutely agree with. I don't agree with you when you say that Abdul Carter is the closest comp to Michael Parsons. To me, without a doubt, is Jalen Walker.
Wow.
Both are wearing the number 11, and I look at them from a size standpoint. I've got the chance to see these guys standing right next to each other, and height, weight, they almost look identical. When you watch Jalen Walker play, you watch him playing off the edge, I feel like he comes off the edge with explosiveness, and he does the job that needs to be done, and that's what Michael Parsons does time after time. You talked about him being a chess piece. Being able to put Jalen Walker off the ball, he's capable of doing that. I don't think that he excels in that, just like Dallas realized that Michael Parsons doesn't excel in that. So once they realized what he excelled in, they line him up off the edge, and they allow him to get after the quarterback. And that's what I think you're going to see with Jalen Walker. He's a guy that can do it, but if you really want him to be productive, you line him up off the edge and you let him get after the quarterback.
All right, both of you guys love Jalen Walker. I love Jalen Walker, too. I think I'd be ecstatic if the Panthers got him at 8. However, just to change things up, I'd go with Mason Graham. And I know the Panthers have really upgraded their defensive front. You get Derek Brown back. You went and signed a space eater, a guy who can soak up 2 tackles, 2 linemen, and a guy like Bobby Brown. Ashawn Robinson is back for another year. Now you have more depth with Shai Tuttle. I think go ahead and reinforce that strength. We got hit with injuries last year up front. We saw what that did. Had trouble stopping anybody against the run. You bring in a guy like Mason Graham, his college tape, explosive, unblockable, played for a winning program at Michigan, seems to play with that high-octane motor and then has the talent on top of that. I think he's got a chance to be a really good piece if he ends up here.
I think he could definitely be a great piece, but I just feel like there's too many bodies in that one space. And you can't have too many guys in one room. It's great to have depth. And when you look at the depth that we had after DB last year, it was not a whole lot there. But like we talked about, Dan, he went and addressed that position in particular in bringing in Turk, bringing in Brown from the Rams. I feel like that solidified that room, getting DB back, also being able to keep and retain Ashawn, like having those guys in that room. I feel like that group is solidified. So if I'm looking at this number 8 pick, Graham would be a great addition because of his ability and what he brings to the table. I just don't see him being a fit for that particular room.
Yeah, I unfortunately see Mason Graham is that run stopper, right? That guy that is going to eat up the space and allow, like Thomas talked about, being a rookie and playing behind our defensive line. It's a clear vision when you have that many space eaters up front. Dan took care of the run this year with Bobby Brown, Tershawn Wharton, those big guys, Derek Brown coming back. Now address the pass rush. Rotational pieces, right? DJ Wanham, you bring back Jadeveon Clowney, Jones, who they just signed in the offseason. Those are all the guys that are going to be great kind of mentors for a young edge rusher, and now you have a rotational guy. Imagine Coach Vero having all those guys on the field at some capacity and being able to, who's coming, who's blocking, who's dropping, who's rushing, and I think that's the chess piece, that chess game, that mental game that you play on defense with so many talented edge rushers.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun debate. Certainly it's probably going to be a debate in the war room as well, should the draft fall the way we just saw. Panthers, though, will have their eyes on at least 3 other teams, probably more, but 3 certainly, the Falcons, the Saints, and the Bucs. A lot of crossover in terms of needs with some of the division rivals. When we come back, we will give a snapshot of the NFC South and what the Panthers' biggest rivals plan to do in this year's draft, and how the Saints quarterback situation might impact what Carolina does with that number 8 pick.
From 9 years old all the way up until that point, I never wanted a game to finish faster than that game.
Trevin Wallace said it. That was Alabama, Bryce.
Yeah.
We've seen that. Standing in the face of that pressure, making some of those throws. When they go 0 and everybody's coming and he hits Liggett for the first down, it's like, woof.
I think that was maybe the most impressive part.
You're a Panthers fan and you saw that game Sunday. Boy, there were a lot of wins that were made, a lot of small victories that have a chance to pay dividends down the road.
As an organization, if there's a glimmer there, you got to surround them with people.
Cam's way cooler than you. Cam's way cooler than you, Jake.
And you know what? I'm okay to admit it because you know why? I like Cam Newton. Cam Newton and I are friends. Proud to say we're friends. He always treated me with the utmost respect, my family, everything. And so I'm a huge fan of Cam.
It's a good problem to have when you've got too many guys playing well on your offensive line. These guys have come in and played so well, despite having lots of different lineups.
They're having some success now, and they're being able to say, okay, what we're doing works, and getting more confident every time they go out there on the field.
Trey, Boston. Let's go.
Hopefully he'll have a dominant performance in his next Super Bowl too then.
No doubt. No doubt. We got to get back there and win one. Not a lot of D tackles can not only shed a guy, but then they find the ball.
Like, watch the snap. Like, as a coach, when you coaching this up and you see guys and you tell guys to separate from the end, go back to that play. Just watch at the end.
Yep.
Like how violent he is with that separation and that snap. And Mekhi Becton, that dude is a ginormous dude, man. And I don't think people really understand how big and how strong Mekhi Becton is. And before him to just be able to just snap and throw him to the side like that, that says a lot about what he brings to the table and what kind of energy and effort that he has as a football player.
The NFC South, yet again, seems very wide open, and there's a lot of crossover in terms of who needs what in the division. We've outlined some of the Panthers' needs. Let's look at some of their rivals. Al, the Atlanta Falcons, I feel like this is a tired refrain. They need a pass rusher. We've said that a lot. Could this be the year they finally take a pass rusher?
Yeah, I think so. I think their focus is going to be much like the Panthers on edge rusher, on someone to generate some pressure on the quarterback. You have those guys that are after kind of the Jalen Walkers that we talked about, and Mike Green, maybe James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. So I think if you're the Atlanta Falcons, you're going to take a really good hard look at a guy that can come off the edge and do some damage, get after the quarterbacks in this division. So it's been a while. They keep trying to address the needs. They've lost Grady Jarrett, and they need to replace some of that production on the defensive line.
And TD, look at the Bucs down there. A lot of the same needs that the Panthers have. There's even talk of, pairing another safety with Antoine Winfield Jr. They're getting older on defense. The Bucs and the Panthers probably have a lot of the same guys on their draft boards.
I would probably say that they do. When you look at this division, we understand what it takes to win it. We understand what's the positions of needs for all of these teams like we just showed. But at the end of the day, I think that both of those teams are going to look at these situations and they're going to say, hey, we got to go and we got to draft the best guys that are available at that position of need. And I know that's what a lot of teams are doing. But at the end of the day, I just feel like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as they continue to get older, you got Antoine Winfield at safety, they are starting to draft Georgia guys like no other. So I can see them, if Malachi Starks is sitting there at that safety position and them adding him to their draft board, or either a guy like we just talked about, the edge rusher out of Georgia as well, that's not Jalen Walker and Michael Williams. I feel like Michael Williams is a guy that can add a lot of value to a defensive line down in Tampa, like he's done so many times at Georgia.
See how he lights up, but he's not wrong. These days you draft a Georgia guy, especially on the defensive side, it seems to work out.
Listen, I'm always talking about my Georgia guys, and Howie has shown time and time again that you cannot lose if you take a Georgia kid. He has like 7 or 8 on his team right now. So
the Saints are going to be fascinating. They pick one spot after the Panthers at number 9, and it's a team that has age on the defensive side, but the big question now is, what do they do at quarterback? Derek Carr with his shoulder, nobody's quite sure. The Saints are hoping to have some clarity before the draft. Spencer Rattler, when he played last year, TD, struggled. There's a chance not only the Saints would take a quarterback, but let's say Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are off the board. Then are they trading up? Are they trading down? And if they are in position to make a move, all of a sudden if the Panthers want to make a move, that 8th pick may have just gotten more valuable.
Yeah, but we're not trading our 8th pick to the Saints. We're not trying to do anything to help them in any kind of way. So I don't foresee that being a thing. I see the Saints drafting their quarterback position in free agency. Not in free agency, but in a trade.
Okay.
And you hear a lot of talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars wanting to move on from Trevor Lawrence. There have been rumblings about that, and I know Trevor Lawrence has a no-trade clause. That's one of the things that he was able to negotiate within his deal. But if he has the opportunity to have a fresh start, to go into a historic franchise like the Saints, to be able to lead them in a new way, I would say the Saints should do everything that they can to try to bring in a guy like Trevor Lawrence to help solidify that quarterback position.
Yeah, I believe the Saints are in the quarterback market. I don't believe they're in the market at 9. I think they're going to try to find a way to kind of get away from Derek Carr. Spencer Rattler doesn't feel like he's the guy for that organization. So what are they going to do? I think there are a lot of different options out there that they can explore. But what I do know is that Kellen Moore, a great quarterback mind, a great coach that's down with that organization, I don't believe he wants to put his future in the hands of a rookie quarterback. Not just yet. So I think it's going to be Derek Carr for a while until maybe, like TD's saying, they come up with a dance partner. They have so many other needs. Wide receivers, one for me. Chris Olave has been plagued by a lot of concussions over the last couple of years. Can that team look for Teteroy McMillan, one of the top wide receivers in this year's draft? Is he able to be there at number 9 for the Saints to pick him up to add to that wide receiver room?
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to be a great question. And going into this offseason, to kind of piggyback off of what you just talked about, I don't think that Carr is going to make it this season. They're talking about his shoulder is pretty significant. So that could be something to definitely watch.
And here's the potential wrinkle. You have the Steelers, who also could be in the market for a quarterback in the draft. They pick at 21. The Rams, also could be in the market for a long-term quarterback solution. They pick at 26. If you're the Panthers, and let's say there is a QB, let's say Shedeur Sanders is on the board when the Panthers pick at 8, are you calling Pittsburgh and LA saying, hey, we know the Saints want a quarterback. Are you interested in potentially moving up, right? That's where some of that leverage comes into play.
Absolutely, but I'm not calling them. If they want a quarterback, they'll be calling us because then that puts the onus on them to make that move. And once they make that call, you're going to have to bring the house. You got to bring everything in a handbasket to make sure that you solidify that 8th pick. If the quarterback position is really what you want, then I'm going to need a first round this year, first round next year, maybe a second rounder in this year's draft. Yeah. But that's how negotiations work. I mean, I know it's not the number 1 overall pick that we gave all those things up for, like, 2 years ago, but at the end of the day, it's a valuable spot and it's a valuable position of need for any team because we know how much of a difference a franchise quarterback makes for any organization.
Al, what would it take for the Panthers to trade down? What do you see the scenario where Dan Morgan says this makes sense?
Yeah, it would take one of those Godfather deals, one of those deals you just can't walk away from, multiple first-round picks. I am not interested in moving back to 21 or 26 if I'm Dan Morgan. We just gave you the history of that 8th overall pick. We talked about Jalen Walker, a difference maker at a position of need in year 1. So for me, that's too far to move back. If you're going to move back, if there's a situation where you slide back a couple and you can guarantee me I'm getting Jalen Walker in the process and maybe bridging that gap between the 8th overall pick and the 57th pick in the second round, yes. But 21, 26, I think you get a playmaker and you get one in the top 10, and that's Jalen Walker.
All right, I'll float this scenario. Let's say you have an opportunity to move down a couple of spots. It still allows you to get the guy that you want, and somebody throws in a 3rd rounder, and now you can maybe use that 3rd rounder with pick 57 to move up higher into the 2nd round.
Listen, I would be inclined to make that move. And the reason why I say that, because if I'm looking for an edge rusher, I look at this draft and you have guys, Shamar Stewart, that could come in and absolutely be effective from Texas A&M. You have guys like James Pierce. We talked about drafting a local kid that it matters to. He's another kid that you could potentially get in that position later in the draft that could come in and be effective and be a pass rusher for you. And then you have the most natural pass rusher, the kid out of Marshall, that's a very, very effective pass rusher. Listen, I'm drawing a blank today, so y'all bear with me when it comes to these names. But the kid out of Marshall is a very effective pass rusher, and which some say that he may be the most natural pass rusher in the draft. So you have an opportunity to take guys like that later in the draft while also solidifying some other picks. I'll have to think hard on it.
Yeah, that's the work in these rooms that Dan and his staff are doing. How big is that gap between a Mike Green and a Jalen Brown? And Mike Green isn't dropping, or he's not that top 10 pick because of talent and production. It's some other things that are on the table for him that's causing him to maybe not be in that same conversation. So I'm with you. There are guys that will be there if you decide to slide back, but it allows you to bridge that 49 pick gap here from the 1st round and the 2nd round.
There is a lot for Dan Morgan to think about tonight. What we've been thinking about for the duration of this show, it's this cooler that's sitting in front of us. It's just been staring at us. Bud Light's the cooler. By the way, that can be yours. Up next, we'll announce the winner of the ultimate Bud Light prize pack for our Panthers draft show giveaway. It might be you.
I think that really speaks to his athleticism, his awareness of what's going on, and being able to cover. Is this Tyreek?
Yeah, Tyreek.
Man.
Yep.
Man, as a safety, he looked like a cornerback on this play.
No doubt. And that's the thing I remember about him in college, playing at TCU, is he can take the ball away. So he's got great hands. He usually catches and capitalizes, on throws. So for him to drop an interception is pretty rare because, his ball production's really good.
Man, that's great.
Yeah, so this game really stood out against Tampa Bay, just in the slot against Mike Evans, multiple times this game to where, he's taking it to Mike Evans, one of the best and most physical receivers in the NFL. So
talking that talk.
No doubt. That's what he does, man.
Listen, just time and time again, you see him on film standing out, refusing to be blocked, and he's letting it loose. He's playing carefree, and when you know and understand what you are supposed to do and what you have to do, you can play 100 miles per hour, and that's what I'm seeing on his film. So definitely loving this pick too.
You know, you dreamed of it, like you get drafted, you hang out with your family, you fly out to go to your team the next day. None of that. Derek Brown, defensive tackle, drafted in the 2020 draft class, 7th overall.
Carolina Panthers select Derek Brown, defensive tackle, Auburn.
Went to the combine, and then, they start, chirping about COVID. So the draft got canceled going to Vegas. I didn't know what to expect, the draft being moved, all these different things happening. I mean, it was, constant being on the phone and just trying to figure out what was going on. And then I think the day of the draft was the most silent day. Ended up doing the draft from my house. NFL had a whole plan and sent cameras and stuff to the house. So we filmed from the house through phones. It was crazy. You only have a certain amount of people in your house. Like, it was all these rules and stuff going on. It was just kind of a day I spent, honestly, sitting at my parents' house, really just sitting there by myself, like, waiting until 7 o'clock came around and trying to figure out what was going on.
With Al Wallace, Thomas Davis, Anish Shroff, it is time for our Bud Light prize pack giveaway. I've got the envelope here, and the winner, Garrett Holland from Iron Station, North Carolina. Congratulations, you are the winner of the giveaway. Special Bud Light prize package coming your way. We've been talking NFL draft. We've talked about prospects. We've talked about the division. Let's really hone in, Al, on what the Panthers need to address. We saw what they did in free agency. As we head into the draft, what are some of the biggest positional needs for this team?
Yeah, if I think I could rank these positional needs for the Panthers, I start where I started this show, and that is edge rush. That's pass rusher. That's difference maker, a guy that can get to and impact offenses through pass rush. So for me, the number one need going into this year's draft, 8th overall pick, pass rush. If I had to go a secondary pick, that second need is going to be pass catcher, playmaker, right? I think when you look at it overall, Dan has done a really good job of building the foundation, right? The fundamental offensive line, defensive line of this team. Now you need those guys. You need the wild guys, the speed, the athleticism, the catch radius, all those things. And I know Xavier Legette was here, JT Sanders, another young talent. You still have Adam Thielen, the old dog, Coker. But now you got to go out and get a playmaker wide receiver. I would prioritize that position. And then for me, linebacker. You can never have depth. You're talking about special teams, guys that do all the little things. Add to that, Trevin Wallace, season just cut down by injuries. So let's see what he has, but let's add to that group with Roseboom and Josie Jewell. Linebacker would be my third choice.
What about you, TD?
Listen, I agree with some of what Al said. Definitely starting with the edge rusher, but for me, the second, I got to go right into the secondary and go to the safety position, because if you look at the roster right now, we don't have very many bodies at the safety position. I know we signed Morrigan in the offseason, and we have Richardson. I think those are the only two safeties that we have on the roster right now.
And so Nick Scott, who was re-signed.
Yeah, and with Nick Scott, but you have to address that safety spot. And I think that we have some really good safeties in this draft that we can utilize and take advantage of. But I also have to agree with you, the off-the-ball linebacker, somebody that can play that linebacker position in the position of need. We saw when Shaq Thompson, Josie Jewell went down last season, we had to kind of bring some guys in off the street, and that was one of the reasons why we struggled late in the season at the linebacker spot. So you have to get more bodies in from a linebacker standpoint. So I know that we did a lot of addressing to the defense in the offseason, but defense still needs some areas to improve on, and I just feel like those are the areas that I would work on right now.
And I'll throw one more. Listen, you have J.C. Horn, you have Mike Jack.
Oh, yeah.
But I would think you could probably use another corner in there as well. Shaw Smith-Wade, right now, that's probably your starting nickel. Does it make sense to look at another potential corner.
Absolutely, because we've all seen, and JC has done a phenomenal job of making sure he's take care of his body, and he's not in the position that he was in the first few years where he was in and out of the lineup. But we know how this game goes, and I'm living proof that injuries do happen. And when they do happen, you got to have somebody that's capable of stepping up in a big way to where it's not a big drop-off. It's hard not to have a big drop-off from a guy like J.C. Horn, who's one of the top corners in this league. But you got to get somebody that can also come in and solidify that corner position and compete with some other guys to push them day in and day out, and you got to get some good talent in.
Yeah, competition, depth, those are all important. I think at cornerback, when I look around the division, the Atlanta Falcons, the Saints, we're talking about them, maybe adding another wide receiver, Tampa Bay, Mike Evans, depth, a lot of 11 personnel. You need multiple cornerbacks, and TD hit it, that have a skill set where it's not a huge gap, right? That third guy coming off the bench, that nickel can't be a guy that's a liability out there on this defense.
And I'll throw one more position out there. Could be an area where the Panthers go maybe on day 2, probably more likely day 3, and that's offensive tackle. We saw a lot of what they did with the offensive line. It's a really good unit. They return a lot. You do have Taylor Moton going into the final year of his contract. It may be an area where Dan Morgan says, hey, let's maybe go find some insurance, and a guy, if Timo doesn't come back, you might be able to plug in a year from now.
Absolutely, and that's another position that you can never have too many bodies. We talked about having too many bodies at the defensive tackle spot with all of the guys that we have, but the offensive tackle position, I feel like you can never have enough guys, because those guys, offensive linemen usually are guys that you could plug inside, you could put them outside. They're interchangeable. So I feel like if you get a guy that can do a combination of both of those things, then you're cooking with grease.
Yeah, offensive line is so difficult to play. I think you draft those guys, you put them behind all those veterans, you bring back Brady Christensen, all the veteran guys with experience, and you allow them to learn and develop without having to throw them in the fire as a rookie in the NFL against some of the elite pass rushers. So offensive line would be a position I would address for depth, because you can't, like TD said, have too many of those guys. To start developing, plan ahead. I'm not willing to start talking about Taylor Moton not being here.
No, I know. He's been such a fixture.
About it. Yeah,
he's been such a fixture. And again, I think the hope for everybody is that Timo and the Panthers have a reunion in the offseason that keeps him in Carolina for a long time. However, I feel like we have talked a lot about ifs and what ifs and all these different scenarios. We're all ready for the draft. So one more time, again, let's pop up who we have in our mocks. I went Mason Graham, the D lineman out of Michigan. TD and Al went with Jalen Walker out of Georgia. I'll be honest, if we get any of those guys, I'll be happy.
Absolutely, I agree.
Good football players at number 8. You get a guy in the middle of the defense, and Mason Graham, that's going to wreck your game plan, and then a guy off the edge, Jalen Walker. I like his position versatility. TD likes him primarily as an edge rusher, but
and a Georgia
guy. And he's a Georgia guy.
And the person, though. I've gotten to know the kid over the last 5 years, and he's just a great kid, man. And you just love whenever you can bring a great person into your organization, and I happen to know him personally, so he's a great kid.
What does Dan Morgan says? What does he say? He wants more of dogs?
He said the man has said it himself. He wants more dogs, and I don't think there's a guy that more of a dog than Jalen Walker.
Yep, and he is a North Carolina native as well. You want to stay up to date on all things draft related for the Panthers. It's located on the homepage of Panthers.com. It's the 2025 Draft Tracker, or you can go to the official Panthers app. This tracker provides you with the latest news, pick analysis, all during the 2025 NFL Draft, which begins tonight. So the first round, day 1 tonight, day 2 tomorrow. We're going to have another show for you tomorrow. Kristen Balboni, Trey Boston, Jay Stu, Carolina's all-time leading rusher. They'll be in these chairs. They'll react to what happened on Thursday night, get you set for day 2 and day 3. This has been a lot of fun, but I am done guessing. I am done with conjecture. I'm excited to see who the newest Panther is going to be tonight.
Anish, you just talked about why there's so many different mock drafts.
And then we just
because
went through all this.
I'm sitting right here right now, and I'm thinking in my head, well, what if we do this at this position? Or what if we do that? If we trade back, we could get a safety. And that's why it's so many mock drafts, because there's so many different things that can happen in these 32 spots of teams selecting today, man. So I'm looking forward to the draft tonight for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's an exciting time for all franchises with the hope that they're going to bring in that guy, right, in the first round of this draft that we'll see tonight and get things going. So I'm excited to see what the Panthers and Dan Morgan can do.
We have seen the history of this team. Sometimes that draft pick, it changes the course, it changes a franchise. We've seen it with guys like TD and Cam and Luke and Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Gross over the years. There's been so many. Hopefully we get another one on Thursday night.
Thank you for watching the Panthers Draft Show, presented by Bud Light.